So I read it an hour ago. So I don't. Okay. Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, joined by Riley Fessler and Minna Stein. How are you doing today, guys?
Just swell.
Excellent. Minna, kick us off.
Nope, I got us.
Riley.
Oh, Riley, kick us off. Jesus Christ.
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. Okay. Well, let's just, we'll just leave that in there just so people know that we're not perfect. Come on.
We're human too.
We are human, contrary to what people may think. Yes. A lot of people think I'm a bot. I'm not. I'm real.
I'm not AI.
Yeah, not AI. Exactly. Okay.
Not yet.
Go. Not yet.
US and European military planners are exploring security guarantees for Ukraine following President Donald Trump's pledge to help protect the country. The Pentagon is conducting planning exercises to determine what support Washington could offer beyond providing weapons. One option being considered is sending European forces to Ukraine under U.S. command, although Russia has already ruled out the deployment of NATO troops. Trump has also suggested the possibility of providing U.S. air support to Ukraine, possibly through more air defense systems or enforcing a no-fly zone.
Yeah, okay. Look, first of all, what is this? Russia isn't going to accept stuff. If the way this is going to work out is everybody does just what Russia wants, this isn't going to work for anybody. The whole point is that Ukraine needs to be defended against Russia. So, Russia can't be the one that is determining the nature of the defense. Secondly, I do think in the current era, the idea of U.S. command over European troops is kind of old, obsolete, past its sell-by date. If U.S. troops aren't going to be there, why should U.S. be in command? If U.S. is half on Russia's side or more than that, why should the U.S. be in command? Unclear. We talked a little bit about this yesterday in the special episode of Need to Know we did on this with General Mark Hertling. And Mark Hertling made a point, that this idea of a no-fly zone is a non-starter. Super expensive, very difficult to do. I also, think this is premature. I don't think we're going to get to this point. One of the conclusions we reached in this discussion with Mark Hertling and Angela Stent was that, we're farther from peace today than we were before these two summits on Friday and on Monday. So I don't know. I'm glad people are having the conversation. Ukraine needs defense. And the best way to defend Ukraine is NATO, is getting Ukraine into NATO. And, it shouldn't be off the table because Russia's assertions about NATO, on its border are just non-starters. NATO's already on its border. NATO's a defensive organization. But if it isn't NATO, it needs to look, feel, smell, taste, and act like NATO. Minna?
The American Academy of Pediatrics released new COVID-19 vaccine guidelines for children that diverge from recent federal recommendations influenced by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who removed the vaccine from the CDC's routine schedule for healthy children and replaced the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee with anti-vaccine advocates. The American Academy of Pediatrics, reaffirming its commitment to evidence-based guidance, continues to recommend COVID-19 vaccination for children ages 6 months and older, especially those at high risk. This growing divide has sparked accusations from both sides, with federal officials questioning the American Academy of Pediatrics' ties to pharmaceutical companies, and the American Academy of Pediatrics criticizing the federal process as politically compromised and unscientific.
Yeah, I think unscientific is an understatement. I think the federal process is actually driven by anti-vaxxers and crackpots. It's anti-science. It's not unscience. It's anti-knowledge. The people who are running HHS are menaces, and the agenda they're trying to advance is 95% dangerous. Good take on this, by the way, on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver this week. Worth looking at. But in any event, it's good to see these organizations stand up, and I think on a wide variety of things. As the federal government becomes less reliable, whether it's on economic data or it's on crime data or it's on what kind of medications Americans should be taking, private enterprises, private entities, the nonprofit sector, academia are going to have to step up and say, we can provide you with the kind of reliable guidance you once expected from the government. We can't just default to continuing to do things as they were, because the government is not our friend anymore. The government is not being objective. The government is not being evidence-based. The government is not taking into consideration the real interests of the American people. Rather, it's taking into consideration the interests of Trump, the interests of Trump's supporters, the interests of big corporations, and the interests of a bunch of people who ideologically align with Trump because they are rejecting science and history. That Trump likes it when people say, oh, climate change isn't real, even though it's real, or vaccines are the problem, even though vaccines aren't the problem. And as we'll hear from a story about to come up, there are other areas where he's meddling with facts in order to support his agenda, because his agenda is anti-fact. It's only something you can believe in if you don't actually know what is going on in the world. Right?
Israel has given final approval for a controversial settlement project in the occupied West Bank known as E1, which critics say would divide the territory and destroy hopes for a future Palestinian state. This development has been stalled for over 2 decades, often due to U.S. pressure, but was pushed forward by far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich. The international community overwhelmingly considers these settlements to be illegal and an obstacle to peace. This move is part of a broader trend of increased settlement expansion and heightened tensions in the West Bank, as world attention remains focused on the war in Gaza.
Very clear the far right in Israel sees this time with Netanyahu in power, Netanyahu desperate to hold on to power, in which they have a lot of leverage, as a chance to make a sprint to putting a stake through the heart of a Palestinian state once and for all, and sort of doing, you'll forgive the expression, Israel from the river to the sea, where there is no space for the Palestinians in it anywhere. And this project, which has been shelved for a long time because it does, in fact, sort of destroy the idea of a contiguous West Bank political entity that could be controlled by and represent the interests of the Palestinians, is another way to do that, as is attacking Gaza, as is promoting other settlements elsewhere, as is publicly rejecting the idea of a two-state solution. So this is their project. This is what they're working on. The world at large sees it as terrible and illegal. And the problem is that until the United States government, Israel's principal international ally, stands up against these things, Israel's just going to keep doing it. And the Trump administration is not going to stand up against it. Our ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, is all for it. And we're coming to a head here in which we just see how much of a pariah state Israel is willing to live with being, and for how long.
Texas Democrats are protesting new GOP-imposed surveillance measures requiring permission slips and police escorts to leave the State House chamber, a response to their previous quorum-breaking walkout aimed at delaying a Republican-led redistricting vote. Representative Nicole Collier and others are refusing to comply with what they call demeaning and invasive protocols, instead camping out on the chamber floor to block a vote on new congressional maps that would add 5 GOP seats. The standoff is part of a broader national national redistricting battle driven by Donald Trump's efforts to secure a Republican majority in the 2026 midterms.
Yeah, this is authoritarianism in support of authoritarianism, right? This is, the state of Texas, the Republicans in charge, overreaching in order to prevent Democrats from going about their daily business, expressing themselves freely, and actually openly opposing them, using tactics of, strong arm administrations around the world. Why? Because they want to control the Congress. They're trying to steal votes in the Congress so that they can continue to support a Trump agenda, which leads to what? Fewer voting rights, more intercession of federal entities in cities that oppose the government, restrictions on free speech, parts of the Justice Department targeting Trump opponents, and so forth. It's a cycle, and it's operating at the federal level, and it's operating at the state level, and it's operating at the local level. I think it's very important to see each of these stories as part of a bigger whole, part of a bigger effort, which is active work on the part of the Republican Party to gut democracy and fundamental rights in the United States.
President Trump has criticized the Smithsonian Institution for what he sees as an excessive focus on negative aspects of American history, such as slavery. He stated that the museum should instead highlight the country's success and brightness, and his administration is now reviewing their content. This is the latest example of his administration attempting to influence cultural institutions and minimize the experiences and history of Black people in the U.S. Historians and other critics have pushed back, arguing that the Smithsonian appropriately deals with the reality of slavery and civil rights as a defining part of the nation's past.
Yeah, this is nauseating. Trump puts out a social media post yesterday in which he says there's too much focus on the negative side of slavery, like there was a positive side of slavery. And as I said earlier, it's because if you study the facts, if you study the reality of the United States, if you study the aspects of our history like slavery or discrimination against people of color, or discrimination against women, or genocide against Native Americans, it doesn't fit with Trump's policies that are against wokeness, that are actually white supremacists, that want to support a Christian nationalist view of this country. And so how do you get rid of those things? Well, when you're Stalin, or when you're Hitler, or when you're the Taliban, you go after cultural institutions, because culture deals with what people believe and what they feel. It deals with people's identity. It deals with the kind of the sinews of a society that holds it together. And you can't win a cultural war where you're trying to elevate one group about others and change the narrative of the country just by legislation that you pass in Congress. You have to go after it from the wellsprings of culture. And that's why Trump is going after museums, going after the National Endowment for the Arts, going after the National Endowment for the Humanities, going after public broadcasting, going after the Kennedy Center, going after educational institutions. We talk about culture war as if it's a, kind of a debate about whether you should wear a red baseball cap or not. But that's not what this is about. This is about resetting the American narrative to go back to one in which the preeminence in American life and the aspects of American life that we celebrate focus on the contributions and values of white Christian men. And that's how stark it is. The fact that Trumpism was born of a movement in the Democratic Party that gave America its first black president, its first black vice president, and 2 women candidates for the presidency is not an accident. This is where we are. We're at a crossroads. Are we going to be the inclusive nation that we have hoped to be for at least much of the past 50, 60, 100 years? Or are we going back to the mid-19th century view, the mid-18th century view, that is the only comfortable one for the embattled minority in the United States, the minority full of grievance, which is white Christian men who thought, hey, I thought I was entitled to be in charge of this country, but I'm not. But I am threatened by people at the border. But I am threatened by the diversity within our society. But I am threatened by people who have ideas that don't fit with my ideas. And we are the fears of the ignorant and the intolerant are driving almost every aspect of American public policy today, from immigration policy to foreign policy to economic policy to education policy to cultural policy. And that's a really, really dark place to be. Is that it?
That's it.
That's where you want to leave us for the day?
Yep.
Okay.
We always try to end
on a low note so that it's only up from here.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty low note. That was a pretty grim cocktail of authoritarianism, racism, sexism, intolerance, and ignorance emanating from our government. And I sometimes I think, people are listening to this, what's their reaction? Oh my God, is this just some sort of rehashed Democratic Party position or progressive position or the views of a couple of people who happen to have a podcast or some kind of streaming platform. And it's not, folks. I mean, all we're trying to do here is talk about things the way they are. And this is the way they are right now. And this is the reality. And if you want to minimize it and say this is political and, there are multiple points of view, there's not. There's not 2 sides to whether vaccines work or whether climate change is caused by human intervention in our, environment, or whether slavery was bad, or whether genocide against, Native Americans was bad, or whether women deserve equal rights to men, or whether people of color deserve equal rights to people who are white, or whether we're better off having universities that attract the smartest people in the world and discuss the full range of ideas, or whether we're better off being a democracy where everybody gets a vote, where certain groups are not discouraged from voting or disempowered by those in charge, or whether we're better off as a country in which everybody's perspectives and interests are taken into consideration, as opposed to just the 1% or just a group of political extremists. There's no debate about those things. Those are facts. And what we're trying to do is explore those. And if it seems a little one note sometimes, it's because we're in a really, really grim moment. And it's really, really important every so often to stop and say, what does the landscape look like from A to Z? What does the landscape look like? And that's what we try to do here. Anyway, that's not an apology. It's more of an explanation. We'll continue to do what we think is right. We hope you will come back. We hope you will support what we're doing here, the DSR Network. If you want to know more about these summits, definitely listen to what we did yesterday with Angela Stent of Georgetown University and General Mark Hertling, or come and join our Deep State Radio podcast today. We did a great podcast with Norm Ornstein on the political situation in the country right now. We did a great Civil Consciousness podcast looking at how AI policies may result in kind of new forms of censorship and what we need to be looking out for there. So we got a lot here for you at the DSR Network. We hope you'll listen to it, and we hope you will support it by becoming a member, by going to the dsrnetwork.com and clicking on membership. I do want to say one other thing. We've got our full roster of shows this week, and that includes tomorrow and Friday. And then next week, as we've said before, is Best of DSR. We do this every summer, the last week of the summer. And then we resume our full regular schedule of programming as of the Tuesday after Labor Day. But we got plenty of new stuff this week. I'm sure there's plenty of new stuff that you haven't listened to. So go listen to that or watch it on TikTok or YouTube. And see you again soon. Thanks, Riley. Thanks, Minna. Bye-bye.